National Cemetery, President Obama is observing this Veterans Day holiday, and he's expected to lay a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknowns and then make remarks later at the Memorial Amphitheater adjacent to the tomb. We also expect to hear from Veteran Affairs Secretary Eric Shinseki. First Lady Michelle Obama, Vice President Joe Biden, and his wife, Dr. Jill Biden, are also expected to attend.
Ladies and gentlemen, President Obama has arrived and is being greeted by the hosts for today's observance. The Honorable Eric K. Shinseki, Secretary of Veterans Affairs, and spouse Mrs. Patricia Shinseki. Ms. Catherine Condon, Executive Director, Army National Cemeteries Program. Mr. Patrick J. Hallinan, Superintendent, Arlington National Cemetery, and his spouse, Mrs. Doreen Hallinan. Mr. Richard Delaney, National President, the Retired Enlisted Association, and his spouse, Mrs. Patricia Delaney, and Major General Michael S. Linnington, Commanding General of the United States Army Military District of Washington, and his spouse, Mrs. Brenda Linnington.
sea to shining sea.
Please welcome Major General
Michael S. Linnington, Commanding General, United States Army, Military District of Washington. Ms. Catherine A. Condon, Executive Director, Army National Cemeteries Program. Mr. Richard Delaney, National President of the Retired Enlisted Association. And the Honorable Eric K. Shinseki, Secretary of Veterans Affairs. All rise. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the Parade of Colors. As we march on the colors, the United States Navy Band will perform the National Emblem March. Please place your hand over your heart or render a hand salute. Please remain standing for the prayer for all veterans, delivered by Chaplain Keith Etheridge, Acting Director of the Department of Veterans Affairs Chaplain Service.
Please join me in prayer. Eternal God, we seek your blessing this morning as we come together, united as one people, to honor veterans of every generation. Each time we come to Arlington and stand in this sacred place, we feel your presence along with all who are memorialized here. So we come today with thankful hearts, knowing well that we owe our very existence as a nation to veterans, living and dead, who dedicated their lives to the cause of freedom. As we honor our veterans, we also remember their families and loved ones. We know that they too have sacrificed much in support of their military men and women in times of war and peace. Today, we remember our veterans who have returned from the battle to face unexpected challenges at home. Help them to take their skills and build new and meaningful lives in the cities and rural communities all across our land. We pray for our military members who are serving in harm's way in Afghanistan and around the world. May they know that a grateful nation remembers and honors their service. Now, may your presence bring healing and comfort to our nation's veterans and their families. Hear our prayer for veterans. Amen.
Amen. Now I'd like to invite Mr. Rick Delaney, National President of the Retired Enlisted Association, to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. It is now my distinct privilege to introduce the members of the Veterans Day National Committee. The committee was formed by presidential order in 1954 to hold this annual observance in honor of America's veterans and to encourage and support Veterans Day observances throughout the nation. Please hold your applause until I've introduced these special guests. If you're able, please stand when I call your name. Rick Delaney, National President, the Retired Enlisted Association. Harold Fritz, President, Congressional Medal of Honor Society. Larry Polson, National Commander, Disabled American Veterans. Norbert Ryan, Jr., National President, Military Officers Association of America. Stephen Wojciechowski, Legislative Director, Polish Legion of American Veterans. James Ferris, National President, Korean War Veterans Association. Albert Gonzalez, National Commander, American GI Forum. Sheldon Oren, National Commander, Jewish War Veterans of the USA. Charles Cicino, Jr., National Commander, American Ex-Prisoners of War. Leo Haley, National Commander, Catholic War Veterans of the USA. William Meeks, Secretary, Vietnam Veterans of America. John Hamilton, Commander-in-Chief, Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States. Cleve Geer, National Commander, AMVETS. Samuel Hunn, National President, Blinded Veterans Association. John Cahill, National Commander, Army and Navy Union of the USA. H. Gene Overstreet, National Commander, Non-Commissioned Officers. James Coots, National Commander, the American Legion. Bruce McKenty, National Commander, Military Order of the Purple Heart of the USA. Mark Kilgore, National President, Fleet Reserve Association. James Toohey, National Commandant, Marine Corps League. Edward Brogan, National President, Military Chaplains Association. Bill Lawson, National President, Paralyzed Veterans of America. Benny Atkins, National Commander, Legion of Valor of the USA. Gary Engen, Commander-in-Chief, Military Order of the World Wars. Jack Klimp, President, National Association for Uniformed Services. The associate members of the committee are located in the boxes to my left. I'd like to ask the presidents and national commanders of our associate members to stand and be recognized. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in recognizing our veterans' national leadership with your applause. It is now my pleasure to introduce our Veterans Organization host. Founded in 1963, the Retired Enlisted Association is dedicated to enhancing the quality of life for uniformed services enlisted personnel, their families, and survivors, including active duty, veterans, reserves, National Guard, and all retirees. The Retired Enlisted Association is represented today by their national president, retired Air Force Master Sergeant Rick Delaney. A Vietnam veteran, Mr. Delaney resides in Warner Robins, Georgia. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Rick Delaney.
Thank you. President Obama, Secretary Shinseki, members of Congress, members of the armed services, ladies and gentlemen, fellow veterans, and friends. It is an honor and a privilege for the Retired Enlisted Association to host this year's Veterans Day ceremonies, and I want to welcome each of you here. Mr. President, congratulations on your re-election to office. Secretary Shinseki, I especially want to thank you for your service to our nation, both as a distinguished Army officer and as Secretary of Veterans Affairs. Because of your personal experience, your leadership of the VA is not just another job. You know firsthand what can happen to those who serve and how important it is that our nation take care of its veterans. We are here today to recognize and honor the service and sacrifice of all those who have worn one of the uniforms of our nation's armed services. Whether they served in a combat zone like Iraq or Afghanistan, a remote destination, or somewhere around the world, a U.S. base in an allied country, or right here in the United States, they all gave more than lip service to their country. They gave part of their lives, and some gave so much more, so much more. We honor them today because they stepped forward when their nation called. We also remind our fellow citizens that taking care of veterans, keeping the promises made to them, is a cost of defending our nation. Veterans have kept faith with our nation. Our nation must ensure that it keeps faith with its veterans. Perhaps you saw on the news a couple of weeks ago a story about a World War II Japanese-American veteran, Mr. Frank Tanabe, who, even though he was placed in an internment camp after the start of the war, he volunteered to serve in the Army. In an interview he gave a number of years ago, Mr. Tanabe said, quote, "I wanted to do my part to prove that I was not an enemy alien, that none of us were, that we were true Americans. And if we ever got the chance, we would do our best to serve our country." And we did, end of quote. The story was newsworthy because Mr. Tanabe was ailing and cast his vote by absentee ballot just 1 week before he passed away. I believe Mr. Tanabe embodied what it means to be a veteran. Pericles, who lived from 495 to 429 BC and was probably one of the greatest Greeks who ever lived, once said, "Freedom is the sure possession of those alone who have the courage to defend it." Today, at the 11th hour of the 11th day, we honor those millions who have defended our nation in our armed forces and pledge to remain steadfast in reminding our citizens of the debt that is owed to all veterans. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, the Honorable Eric K. Shinseki.
very much. Happy Veterans Day, everyone. What a beautiful day. Rick Delaney took my line here, but let me just say it. Mr. President, congratulations to you and the Vice President on your re-election. Let me also congratulate the First Lady and Dr. Biden and thank them for their leadership and support for veterans and veterans' families. Medal of Honor recipients Harold Fritz, Brian Thacker, Secretary Solis, Senator Murkowski, Undersecretary Joe Westfall, other Department of Defense leaders, Vice Chairman and Mrs. Winnefeld, other leaders of our uniformed services, in the case of our own department, Deputy Secretary Scott Gould, our Deputy Secretary, other VA colleagues, and once again, Rick Delaney, National President of the Retired Enlisted Association, our co-hosts for this year's celebration, representatives of all of our other veteran service organizations, fellow veterans, other distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. 94 years ago today, the guns of World War I fell silent all along the Western Front. Today, we gather at this sacred national shrine to honor and thank Americans of every generation who, throughout our history, have answered the call of duty to safeguard our nation during time of war and during periods of restless peace. 22 million veterans, American veterans today have distinguished themselves by their service in uniform. Their devotion and sacrifice are the bedrock of our sovereignty as a nation, our values as a people, our security as a democracy, and our offer of hope to those in other lands who dream of the freedoms that we enjoy. The service of veterans has provided all of us the gift of liberty. Though the doughboys of World War I are gone, our veterans today represent every other generation since. And so as we gather today, before the start of the coming seasons of both Thanksgiving and gift-giving, we are grateful for the blessings bestowed on our country. This legacy of liberty continues. For the past 11 years, the men and women of our armed forces have stood watch in Iraq, Afghanistan, but also Europe and Korea and more than 150 other countries around the globe. More than 1.5 million veterans have served in combat in the combat theaters of Iraq and Afghanistan and the Horn of Africa. Since 9/11, nearly 3 million veterans have departed the military, having fulfilled their duty to the nation. Nearly 4 years ago, the President asked me to do two things. First, make things better for veterans, now, and then transform the Department of Veterans Affairs to better serve veterans well into the 21st century. And in doing so, he also provided leadership and support that resulted in increases to the VA's budgets by nearly 40% between 2009 and this year, 2013. These are the resources which have greatly enhanced the care and services we're able to provide to millions of veterans. Well over 800,000 of them have been added to VA's healthcare rolls since 2009. Disability compensation for 3.53 million veterans, including more than 359,000 who are 100% disabled. Over $10 billion in annual education benefits to more than 1 million student veterans and eligible family members. Finally, the country's largest national cemetery system, 131 cemeteries where veterans are laid to rest in national shrines befitting their service and sacrifice. And finally, one last time, let me acknowledge the wonders accomplished by the First Lady and Dr. Biden through their Joining Forces initiative. I want to thank them both for the genuine care and concern they have for service members, for veterans, and their families. Veterans couldn't ask for stronger advocates than the President, the Vice President, the First Lady, and Dr. Biden. And that is why, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great personal and professional honor to present to you our Commander-in-Chief, the President of the United States of America, Barack Obama.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Please, everybody be seated. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Secretary Shinseki, for a lifetime of service to our nation and for being such a tireless advocate on behalf of America's veterans, including your fellow Vietnam veterans. To Rick Delaney, to Vice President Biden, to Admiral Winnefeld, Major General Lennington, our outstanding veteran service organizations, our men and women in uniform, active, Guard, and Reserve, and most of all, to the proud veterans and family members joining us in this sacred place. It is truly a privilege and an honor to be with all of you here today. Now, each year, on the 11th day of the 11th month, we pause as a nation and as a people to pay tribute to you, to thank you, to honor you, the heroes over the generations who have served this country of ours with distinction. Moments ago, I laid a wreath to remember every service member who has ever worn our nation's uniform. And this day, first and foremost, belongs to them and their loved ones, to the father and mother, the husband and wife, the brother and sister, the comrade and the friend, who, when we leave here today, will continue to walk these quiet hills and kneel before the final resting place of those they cherished most. On behalf of the American people, I say to you that the memory of your loved ones carries on not just in your hearts, but in ours as well. And I assure you that their sacrifice will never be forgotten. For it is in that sacrifice that we see the enduring spirit of America. Since even before our founding, we have been blessed with an unbroken chain of patriots who have always come forward to serve. Whenever America has come under attack, you've risen to her defense. Whenever our freedoms have come under assault, you've responded with resolve. Time and again, at home and abroad, you and your families have sacrificed to protect that powerful promise that all of us hold so dear: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Today, the proud nation expresses our gratitude, but we do so mindful that no ceremony or parade, no hug or handshake is enough to truly honor that service. For that, we must do more. For that, we must commit, this day and every day, to serving you as well as you've served us. When I spoke here 3 years ago, I spoke about today's generation of service members, this 9/11 generation who stepped forward after the towers fell, and in the years since have stepped into history, writing one of the greatest chapters of military service our country's ever known. You toppled a dictator and battled insurgency in Iraq. You pushed back the Taliban and decimated al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. You delivered justice to Osama bin Laden. Tour after tour, year after year, you and your families have done all that this country has asked. You've done that and more. 3 years ago, I promised your generation that when your tour comes to an end, when you see our flag, when you touch our soil, you will be welcomed home to an America that will forever fight for you, just as hard as you've fought for us. And so long as I have the honor of serving as your Commander-in-Chief, that is the promise that we will never stop working to keep. This is the first Veterans Day in a decade in which there are no American troops fighting and dying in Iraq. 33,000 of our troops have now returned from Afghanistan, and the transition there is underway. After a decade of war, our heroes are coming home. And over the next few years, more than 1 million service members will transition back to civilian life. They'll take off their uniforms and take on a new and lasting role. They will be veterans. As they come home, it falls to us, their fellow citizens, to be there for them and their families. Not just now, but always. Not just for the first few years, but for as long as they walk this earth. To this day, we still care for a child of a Civil War veteran. To this day, we still care for over 100 spouses and children of the men who fought in the Spanish-American War. Just last year, I came here to pay tribute as Frank Buckles, the last remaining American veteran of World War I, was laid to rest. Frank stepped up and served in World War I for 2 years, but the United States of America kept its commitment to serve him for many decades that followed. So long after the battles end, long after our heroes come home, we stay by their side. That's who we are. And that's who we'll be for today's returning service members and their families. Because no one who fights for this country overseas should ever have to fight for a job or a roof over their head or the care that they have earned when they come home. We know the most urgent task many of you face is finding a new way to serve. That's why we've made it a priority to help you find jobs worthy of your incredible skills and talents. That's why, thanks to the hard work of Michelle and Joe Biden, some of our most patriotic businesses have hired or trained 125,000 veterans and military spouses. It's why we're transforming, for the first time in decades, how the military transitions service members from the battlefield to the workplace. And because you deserve to share in the opportunities that you defend, we are making sure that the post-9/11 GI Bill stays strong so you can earn a college education and pursue your dreams. If you find yourself struggling with the wounds of war, such as post-traumatic stress disorder or traumatic brain injury, we'll be there for you as well, with the care and treatment that you need. No veteran should have to wait months or years for the benefits that you've earned, so we will continue to attack the claims backlog. We won't let up. We will not let up. And as we mark the 50th anniversary of the Vietnam War, we have secured new disability benefits for Vietnam-era veterans exposed to Agent Orange. You needed it, you fought for it, and we got it done. That's what we do in America. We take care of our own. We take care of our veterans. We take care of your families. Not just by saluting you on one day, once a year, but by fighting for you and your families every day of every year. That's our obligation, a sacred obligation to all of you. And it's an obligation that we gladly accept for Americans like Petty Officer Taylor Morris. 6 months ago, Taylor was serving our nation in Afghanistan. And as a member of an explosive ordnance disposal team, his job was one of the most dangerous there is: to lead the way through territory littered with hidden explosives, to clear the way for his brothers in arms. On May 3rd, while out on patrol, Taylor stepped on an IED. The blast threw him into the air. And when he hit the ground, Taylor realized that both his legs were gone, and his left arm, and his right hand. But as Taylor lay there, fully conscious, bleeding to death, he cautioned the medics to wait before rushing his way. He feared another IED was nearby. Taylor's concern wasn't for his own life, it was for theirs. Eventually, they cleared the area. They tended to Taylor's wounds. They carried him off the battlefield. And days later, Taylor was carried into Walter Reed, where he became only the 5th American treated there to survive the amputation of all 4 limbs. Now, Taylor's recovery has been long, and it has been arduous, and it's captivated the nation. A few months after the attack, with the help of prosthetics, the love and support of his family, and above all, his girlfriend Danielle, who never left his side, Taylor wasn't just walking again. In a video that went viral, the world watched he and Danielle dance again. I've often said the most humbling part of my job is serving as Commander-in-Chief. And one of the reasons is that every day I get to meet heroes. I met Taylor at Walter Reed, and then in July at the White House I presented him with the Purple Heart. And right now, hanging on a wall in the West Wing is a photo of that day, a photo of Taylor smiling wide and standing tall. I should point out that Taylor couldn't make it here today because he and Danielle are out kayaking. In Taylor, we see the best of America, a spirit that says, when we get knocked down, we rise again. When times are tough, we come together. When one of us falters, we lift them up. In this country, we take care of our own, especially our veterans who have served us so bravely and sacrificed so selflessly in our name. And we carry on knowing that our best days always lie ahead. On this day, we thank all of our veterans from all of our wars, not just for your service to this country, but for reminding us why America is and always will be the greatest nation on earth. God bless you. God bless our veterans. God bless our men and women in uniform. And God bless these United States of America. Thank you very much.
Please rise and join the United States Navy Band in singing God Bless America.
While the storm clouds gather far across the sea, let us pledge allegiance to a land that's free. Hear our voices. Let us all be grateful for a land so fair. As we raise our voices in a solemn prayer.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing as we retire the colors. Retire the colors. Please be seated. This concludes the 2012 National Veterans Day observance. Please be seated for the departure of the President of the United States. Thank you for joining us today as we celebrate and honor all who served.